Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Teresa, this is Lost My Thread. Today I'm going to be talking to you about what I made in the month of July. This is a bit of a different one for me because I don't have a lot to physically show you, though I do have a fair bit to talk about. I actually made quite a few things as gifts this month, and they are no longer with me because they have been given to the recipients, but I will pop in some pictures and talk through what I made with you guys. I was actually away for the last 2 weeks of July, so I don't have anything particularly to show you from that period. But I did quite a lot of panic sewing in the first 2 weeks of July, things that I was determined to get done before I went away. And when you hear what they are, you will understand that I put myself under way too much pressure. I definitely also planned to make some videos that I could put out whilst I was away, but I mean, something had to give. And the sewing things did have to take priority, particularly because I was going to be giving them to somebody and I didn't want to let anybody down. The first one I will talk to you guys about is an apron that I made for my dad. This was a late Father's Day present. It was something I've been wanting to make for him and decided this was my opportunity. I didn't want to have to pay for shipping, so I could just give it to him when I went home. And I made him an apron. It was the Sam apron from Helen's Closet, which is actually a free pattern. And I have to say, for a free pattern, it's pretty good. So there's a couple of different options, one that has a crossover back and one that's just more of a standard apron shape. But what I really like about this is it comes in quite a wide size range, so you can make a specific size for the person that you're making it for, including all different heights. Because my dad is taller than most women's sewing patterns would accommodate for, he's nearly 6 foot tall, I did have to pick a size that would fit for him, and this pattern comes in all different heights, so it was perfect. It is a really good pattern on the whole. I did omit, there was a pocket that was meant to be on the, I'd call it like the bodice, the bib section, and that was just because I wanted to do a Cricut design on top of it. So I used my Cricut Joy to make some iron-on transfers to go onto the top of this. My husband and I sat and worked on the design, and we kind of mix some things together to make it look how we wanted. My dad has a tiki bar in his backyard, which is 10 out of 10, guys. I don't have pictures of the tiki bar, but in general, I will say he decorates it really well. I will pop in some pictures that I might steal from his Instagram because he usually shares some pictures on there. But he goes to town, spends most of his summer in his tiki bar in the backyard, and it's a whole lot of fun. We hang out there a lot when we visit my parents. He is also big on barbecuing. He barbecues a lot in the summertime. He is probably my favorite chef for making baby back ribs, which is one of my favorite foods. And he made ribs while we were there. He wore his apron to show it off. But yeah, the general concept that I wanted for this was a barbecue apron that incorporated the tiki bar, which is where we were going to be eating the food, and right next to the barbecue where he was going to be grilling. And so my husband came up with, and I came up with the idea of Ermiter's Tiki Bar and Grill, Ermiter being his surname, my maiden name. And we put the tiki design on there. We used neon Cricut iron-on transfers. I feel like it came out so cool. I'm so happy with the way that it looks. It is definitely, I feel like, his vibe, being tiki, being neon, being vibrant, and black apron means that it will wash easily as well. I think the fit was absolutely perfect. I did end up having to add an additional line that you might have noticed, a sort of a horizontal line between two elements of the Cricut design. And that was because I was having some major issues with my iron-on transfer. So this is a cotton canvas fabric that I got from Ray Stitch Fabrics. Had to remind myself where it was from. And I will say, being a cotton canvas fabric, it's very thick, it's very heavyweight, which is what I wanted. I wanted this apron to last. But I think being the thicker fabric made it a little bit more challenging. But then adding on to that, I'm using a home iron to iron it on, and all the instructions for it ask you to use their special Cricut branded iron press thing, which I'm not paying $100 for, 100 pounds for, I'm sorry. I'm going to use my home iron. But when I was looking up how to do it, I was finding quite conflicting advice around what temperature to make your iron and how long to press it for. And I ended up burning the first one. Actually, the plastic transfer ended up burning away, and it didn't really transfer on, and then I couldn't get it back on because the transfer paper had peeled away, and then it left a film because I tried to then iron another one over the top, but that wouldn't stick because it wasn't directly on the fabric. It was a whole nightmare, guys, honestly. And this was like, you know, coming up to a few days before my trip, and I was panicking a little bit. I managed to get the transfer onto one half on the top of one and the bottom half of the other. So I added a seam. I French seamed it as well and top stitched it down so it looked like it was intentional. I feel like it does look intentional, and I feel like it actually breaks up the design, because without that pocket on the front, it was just going to be like one big panel up until the pocket. So I feel like it might have looked a little bit strange. Anyway, I like how it looks, and my dad didn't know. He's probably not watching this video, but if he did, Dad, I think it turned out well, so you don't have to be too upset. But I do have the two sections that didn't transfer on so that I can show you guys. I call it my like cursed apron pieces, because honestly this apron felt cursed. The amount of times I tried and failed to iron on these transfers, it was a little sad. So this was meant to be a neon yellow, but I didn't have enough of it. This is just the teeth for the tiki guy, and then part of the surname that the rest of it didn't go on. But the bottom line is, the final apron, the one I gave him, it worked out, and he liked it, and he wore it and made us some barbecue baby back ribs, which were absolutely wonderful. So I feel like it all worked out in the end, and I think my dad liked it. I hope he wears it. It'll keep his clothes clean whilst he's doing some barbecue, and it was a fun project to work on. I also made my mom a couple of Rhapsody blouses by Love Notions. This is a top that I've made for myself before, and I generally feel like it's a really comfortable one to wear, and it really just seemed like the kind of style and silhouette that I thought my mom would like. It's very fitted across the shoulders. There's some gathers at the front and the back yoke. There is a V-neck with an optional tie. I did put the tie on there just because I feel like it creates a neater finish. Is sleeveless. I know my mom likes sleeveless in the summer, so I decided to go with that. And the reason I made two, honestly, is because I couldn't decide on fabric, and I felt like I would give her a couple of tops, which would give her a couple of options if she liked one more than the other. And the first one I made was a viscose fabric, 100% viscose, which is going to be really nice and lightweight and breathable in the summer, has really nice drape to it, and the colors I think are just so phenomenal on this. I love how much the floral pops against the dark background. I made her a matching scrunchie because who doesn't need a matching scrunchie with all the tops in their life? And I know that she definitely appreciated the matching scrunchie. The second one I made is in a cotton double gauze fabric with a lighter background, so, you know, giving you those options. Still a really beautiful bright floral print on top of that one, and again, matching scrunchie, because I'm a good daughter and I'm always going to make a matching scrunchie if that's an option. And she did really like them, and she wore them out and let me take some pictures, and I think they look really beautiful. I did finish these as well with French seams because I want to make them as long lasting as possible and with as nice of a finish as possible. I also made some scrunchies for International Friendship Day, aka Scrunchie Day. This is a sewing community challenge that Sew Got This started over on Instagram. It's a UK only challenge where if you're interested, you sign up to say that you want to make scrunchies for somebody, they pair you up with somebody else who wants to make scrunchies who's then your buddy, and then you sew scrunchies for each other and send them to each other to open on the 30th of July. Which for me, like 30th of July when I signed up for it, seemed like a long time away, and then I realized I was going away halfway through the month, so my deadline suddenly was cut in half. I still made my scrunchies and I was happy to make them, but it did definitely put on the pressure for things to finish before I went away. I actually had a fun buddy. It was Angela of Devon Thread Tales, who many of you will know from YouTube and probably on Instagram as well. We sent some messages back and forth about the kinds of things that we like in a scrunchie, and I love the scrunchie she sent me. I will pop in a picture. She made me 10 scrunchies, which was crazy, above and beyond. They're all really beautiful and all really different, which is super cool. Some are thicker, thinner, they're made in different types of fabrics. I feel like I'm gonna get a lot of use out of those. I ended up making her 5 before I went away. And again, I wanted them to all be a bit different, all a bit unique. In addition to the scrunchies, I also made a card on my Cricut Joy because, you know, I have the option and it's quite a fun thing to do. Went for a sewing theme, which definitely seemed appropriate. The 5 scrunchies that I made one in an Ankara African wax print fabric, which has this really incredible bright vibrant color on it. She said she likes bright colors, it definitely fit the bill. I also sent her a scrunchie made of the double brush poly that I got from Melanated Fabrics. Oh, the Ankara, that one came from Diligent Hands Fabrics. Yeah, the double brush poly one came from Melanated Fabrics in the US. This was my first experience with DBP, absolutely love it. I love this fabric. It's a blue background with a really beautiful floral print on top of it. I made one in a rib knit fabric, which is a green. I feel like it's a good neutral color, but I think it's fun also if you're going to have a solid scrunchie to have a little bit of texture on it. I feel like solids are generally more wearable. Not all the colors have to go with what you're wearing, but that texture just makes it a little bit more interesting. I made a two-tone one because I thought, let's do something a little bit different. I had a Dashwood Studio cotton and a Sorona viscose linen blend that I used for my heather blazer that's kind of like a maroony purpley color. I felt like the two went well together and were just a bit different, a little bit more unusual. And then because I'm a little bit crazy and I do crazy things and push myself, I decided to piece together another one. So I pieced together little 1.5 inch squares to make a scrunchie out of a washed cotton fabric that came from Sew Me Sunshine in a green, and then also a 100% linen fabric that came from Merchant and Mills in this really wonderful orange, pink, and black stripe vibrant one. I have a jumpsuit made in this fabric and I absolutely love it. And I thought it would be fun to make a kind of pieced gingham thing. They ended up being 1 inch squares in the end when it came together, and it was kind of a whole thing to do, but I think it was so worth it. I think it's such a cool scrunchie, and I'm kind of jealous that I don't have one for myself, but I think it's really cool, and I hope that Angela loves the scrunchies that I sent her. I really do love the ones that she sent me. Now, that is all I have as far as completed makes. I do have some works in progress to share with you guys. One thing that I was wanting to do when I was on my trip is I'm planning to hand sew a top. I'm hand sewing the Selwyn top, which is a cashmerette club pattern from Cashmerette. I will say I did not get a lot of hand sewing done on my holiday. I think the main thing honestly was just I was really busy. We were really busy. There was not a lot of downtime at all. So we spent the first half of the trip in Chicago and we were just flying around seeing lots of family. And then the second half of the trip we were in Colorado where my sister lives, and we were just doing lots of activities. I had thought that I would do a fair amount of hand sewing on the plane. I did a little bit of it, but honestly, I'm not great on planes. Like I'm fine, I don't get like anxious or stressed, but I just get very just restless. Like I need to be constantly changing up what I'm doing. So I did some hand sewing for a while, and then I did some knitting, and then I did some reading, and then I watched a movie. You know, like I just didn't do one thing for any particular length of time. Whereas when I'm at home, I can just sit and chill and do something for hours. It's just being in the air. Something happens in my brain. I just cannot settle on one thing in the same way that I do normally. But I did do a little bit of work abroad, and I will say I actually did quite a lot of it more in the last few days since I've been home, but I will show you what I got up to. So all of this happened at some point during the month of July, so I think it's fair to show you guys. So the Selwyn top is quite a crazy one to do hand sewing, but I'm doing it. It has pin tucks, which you can see. So I've hand sewn the pin tucks on both sides of the front of this top. And it's a princess seam, so you join together both sections, like the first strip and the second strip of the princess seam together at the shoulder before you join them together. So I have done French seams on the inside of each of the shoulders for that. And then I also have done French seams on the other half of the shoulder. So this is what's going to join together. So that's all completed now, all French seamed together, all by hand. And I have also started to just put the hem of a ruffle. So there's a ruffle that goes around the version that I'm making, and I've been hand sewing that down. I've got a load of clips, so I hope this doesn't get too noisy, but I just want to show you what it looks like. So I will say my hand sewing, it's not perfect by any means. So sometimes it's straighter and sometimes it gets a little bit wobbly, and I'm totally cool with that. I love that it looks real, right? You can see my hand in it, which was the whole point of doing it by hand. I'm doing back stitch on all of this, so the back of it looks a lot more busy because I'm doubling up on the back while it's just a single layer on the front. That's, I believe, the strongest. It's definitely a very strong hand sewing stitch. And so that's what I've been using generally throughout it. I will say I did make a boo-boo, which I'm not gonna undo. This is definitely becoming a style choice rather than something that I'm about to undo. These pin tucks were meant to be facing the other way, and I only realized that after I was just sewing the shoulder seams together and I'd done all the pin tucks on both of the fronts, because you're supposed to do those first. I'd gotten mixed up with this. I thought was the shoulder, was like the armhole, and this was going to become the neckline, but actually this is the front neckline, and then this is going to connect to the other side of the top with the princess seam. And so these pin tucks were supposed to be pointing outward. The main reason I wasn't going to redo it is, like I said, there's two sides to my stitch, right? So this is the stitch that I want to be visible, and then this is the stitch that I don't want to be visible because it's doubled up, and I feel like it's just a lot more messy. But it's fine. My pin tucks point to the front. It's just, it's my unique Selwyn top. It's nobody else's. This is a really wonderful Liberty lawn fabric that I got from John Lewis, and it's been such a joy to work with. Cotton lawn fabric is such a good choice for hand sewing because you can finger press it, it does what you want, but it also is quite compact, so it's easy to store away. I will say that's the other reason I think I didn't sew as much when I was away. I had made myself a little portable sewing bag with all the bits I needed. So I had a little seam gauge, I had my hand sewing needles and my thread and my clips and a couple of pins. I had an unpicker, I had a thimble, but every time I wanted to do a little bit of hand sewing, I had to pull all those bits out, and it was just a little bit of a faff. Whereas now when I'm sitting at home, I can just have those things out on the coffee table and just grab them. And so I'm more inclined to just grab them for like a few minutes of sewing. It's going to be a fun one to put together. It wasn't exactly the holiday sew that I thought it was going to be, but it's been nice to get stuck into it. And like I said, since I've been back and in the UK and a bit jet lagged and not doing too much, it's been a really good activity for me to just sit and quietly do, you know, maybe while I'm watching TV or watching my husband play video games, that kind of thing. So it's fun to now be properly in the project. It's a slow project, and that is the whole point of it, but I'm really enjoying it so far. The other thing that I have started, I have cut out the Glenelly top by Itch to Stitch. This is a top with a sort of a semi-square neckline, like a modern square neckline t-shirt. I talked about this in my summer sewing plans. I think this one will be a fairly quick one to whip up, and I felt like it would be nice to do a quick sewing project whilst I've got my slow sewing project in the background. So that will be the next thing that I make, and it will be mostly made on the serger. Should come together really easily. And for anybody who is keeping up with my knitting progress, the last time I told you about my knitting, I was in the process of working on a pair of socks. I was knitting two together, the Daily Sock by Summerlee Design Company. It has this really cool design on it. First time I'd made this sock, and unfortunately I have had to completely rip that apart and start over again. I had gotten past the heel, probably about a quarter of the way past the heel. It's a top-down sock. And I went to go try it on and realized that it was just way too tight. I could not get it over my own heel. The main body of the sock was just super tight. I don't know what happened. My assumption is, so I did do a test knit of this. So I had done probably a good length of it just to check my gauge. I probably did like a, 5-inch. I did a full round just because I wanted to make sure that it was accurate. And it did seem like it was the right gauge for it, but I think probably when I was doing it for real, like making the real sock, I wasn't that familiar with the knitting pattern, and I think maybe I was just pulling things a bit tighter, particularly when I was going around the ends of the loop. Who knows? But it was way too small. I need to play around with trying a different needle size, but I will say that I wasn't going to do that and then start those socks before I went away. It just seemed a little bit crazy. I wanted to have a knitting project that I knew that I could just pick up and work on and know that it was going to work out. And so I decided to take the same yarn that I was using and just make a different pair of socks. So I'm making the I'm So Basic sock by Summerlee Design, one that I know works well for me. It's just straight stockinette with a little rib at the top, and you can do a contrast at the top of the cuff and then down at the heel and the toe, which is what I'm gonna do. And I'm using these yarns that can show you my progress now. So I'm not doing 2 at a time. I felt like traveling with 2 at a time, again, was just gonna make things a lot more awkward. So I'm just doing 1 sock at a time. So you can see the cuff is in this great pink color, and the main sock is gonna be in this really vibrant blue. Both of these come from Made by Penguins, these yarns, and this one's coming together a lot faster. I mean, not surprising, it's a much more simple knitting pattern. So I'm gonna make a pair out of these, and then I will worry about trying to get back onto the daily sock and figure out how I can make that one work for me. But that's a new sock project, old one, bye-bye. It's all part of the process, guys. I don't feel too sad about it. It's knitting. It's about the knitting rather than the finished knit for me, really, primarily. So that will be one that I'll be slowly working on, and I will keep you guys updated. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know if you had a more or less productive month in July. I am looking forward to some quicker sewing projects and some sewing projects for me coming up, because sewing for other people is really nice to be able to give people the gifts, but it's just that little bit extra pressure, and it'll be nice to just be able to chill out and just make some things for me. I hope you enjoyed hearing what I got up to in July. Please do give me a like if you did enjoy the video. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel if you want to see future videos, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!